What stood out wasn't the envelope from Nidalene's grandmother or Marco's reaction, but why a sealed medical archive was tied to custody. What exactly has everyone overlooked here?
Mrs. Hale, until this review is complete, you are not to speak directly to your daughter. The social worker didn't even look at me when she said it. Marcus did. He stood beside the conference room window with his arms folded, calm enough to make me look unstable just by breathing too hard. I tightened my hands under the table so nobody would see them shaking. 3 people sat across from me: my husband, 2 hospital administrators, a custody evaluator with a file thick enough to erase a year of my life all over again. Marcus had already told everyone what kind of mother I was, and for 14 months, they believed him. Then the doctor walked in, carrying a sealed envelope. Not a file, not court papers. An envelope with my grandmother's handwriting across the front. What unsettled me wasn't the date written on it. It was the look on Marcus's face when he saw it. The doctor closed the door behind him carefully, like he already knew this meeting was going to change something important. Nobody spoke at first. Dr. Levin looked older than I remembered. His gray tie sat crooked beneath his coat, and he kept one hand on the envelope instead of setting it down immediately. That alone felt strange. Every other doctor I'd dealt with over the last year had treated me cautiously, clinically, like anything I said might suddenly confirm Marcus's version of me: unstable, volatile, unsafe around my own child. But Dr. Levin wasn't looking at me like that. He was looking at Marcus. "This meeting is being recorded," the custody evaluator said quietly. Marcus nodded once, composed again. "Of course." That was Marcus's talent. He knew exactly how much calm to perform. When Lily was born, people used to tell me how lucky I was to have a husband so patient. He scheduled appointments, managed medications, answered questions before I could. Even after the custody ruling, he never raised his voice in public. He didn't need to. He could destroy me politely. The evaluator opened the file in front of her. "Mrs. Hale, this review concerns prior psychiatric findings submitted during the original custody hearing." Prior psychiatric findings. Not evidence. Findings. I noticed that immediately. Marcus noticed me noticing it. His jaw tightened for half a second before smoothing out again. 14 months earlier, he'd sat in another room across from another panel and explained why I shouldn't be left alone with Lily. He talked about mood swings, panic episodes, paranoid accusations. Every sentence sounded measured, reluctant, painfully reasonable. And I had cried during that hearing. That was the part nobody forgot. Not the exhaustion, not the medication changes, not the fact I'd begged for copies of my own treatment records and somehow never received complete files. Just the crying. Marcus had leaned forward afterward and whispered, "You're making this easier than I expected." I still heard that sentence in my sleep sometimes. Dr. Levin finally placed the envelope on the table. The paper was faded along the edges. My grandmother's handwriting crossed the front in sharp blue ink. "For Nidaleen Hale only, dated April 3rd, 7 years prior." The social worker frowned. "What exactly is this?" Before the doctor answered, Marcus stepped away from the window for the first time. "That has nothing to do with custody," he said evenly. "My wife's grandmother was confused near the end of her life." Confused. The word landed too quickly, too prepared. Dr. Levin looked at him for a long moment. "That's interesting," he said quietly. Marcus's expression didn't change, but mine did. Because for the first time in over a year, someone in that room sounded like they already knew Marcus was lying. Then Dr. Levin slid the envelope toward me and said, Mrs. Hale, your grandmother instructed me to give you this only if your husband ever tried to have you declared mentally unfit. Marcus was never supposed to hear those words out loud. For the first time since the meeting began, the room stopped moving around him. The custody evaluator looked up sharply. One of the hospital administrators adjusted her glasses and glanced toward Marcus, like she was recalculating something she'd already accepted as fact. Even the social worker who had warned me not to speak to my daughter sat back in her chair. Marcus recovered quickly. With respect, he said calmly, Eleanor Vale had severe cognitive decline before her death. I'm not sure we should be treating private family paranoia as evidence. Private family paranoia. He said it smoothly enough that a year ago, everyone in that room probably would have agreed with him instantly. But Dr. Levin still hadn't taken his eyes off him. She prepared legal instructions, the doctor replied, not personal opinions. Marcus's fingers flexed once at his side. I stared at the envelope in front of me without touching it yet. My grandmother had died 3 years before Lily was born. 7 years ago, Marcus and I were still being invited to charity dinners together. People described us as stable, successful, predictable. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Marcus had already started documenting me. At first, I thought he was being attentive. After Lily's birth, he began tracking my sleep patterns in spreadsheets, logging emotional reactions in his phone, saving screenshots of arguments. If I forgot something small, he wrote it down. If I raised my voice once, he remembered it for months. You've been overwhelmed lately, he'd tell me gently in front of other people. Then later, privately, you don't even hear yourself anymore. The frightening part was how believable he sounded, especially once medication entered the picture. After a difficult postpartum recovery, my doctor adjusted prescriptions several times. Marcus volunteered to organize them for me. He attended appointments, spoke to nurses, answered questions before I could finish answering myself. At the time, I thought he was helping. Then one afternoon, 6 months before custody was taken from me, I found printed emails on his office desk. Messages between Marcus and my psychiatrist's assistant. Questions about dosage increases, comments about continued instability, requests for updated behavioral notes. I confronted him that night. By morning, the emails were gone. And 2 weeks later, Marcus suggested family counseling because he was concerned for Lily's safety. Back in the conference room, my hands finally moved toward the envelope. The seal cracked softly beneath my thumb. Inside was a folded letter, and taped to the paper was a small brass key. Dr. Levin exhaled slowly the moment he saw it. Marcus didn't. He just stared at the key like he already knew exactly what it opened. Then the doctor said something that changed the entire room. Mr. Hale, he said carefully, why would Eleanor leave instructions specifically involving your wife's psychiatric records? The question hung in the room longer than it should have. Marcus gave a restrained smile, the kind he used when he wanted people to feel unreasonable for doubting him. I think we're moving dangerously far away from the actual issue here, he said. My daughter's well-being. Not our daughter. My daughter. The custody evaluator noticed it too. Her pen stopped moving for a second before she continued writing. Dr. Levin folded his hands. This review exists because inconsistencies were discovered in prior documentation. That word again. Inconsistencies. Marcus's posture shifted almost invisibly. Most people wouldn't have caught it, but after 12 years of marriage, I knew every version of his silence. This one meant calculation. What inconsistencies? The hospital administrator asked. The doctor looked at me first before answering. Mrs. Hale's grandmother placed legally protected materials under restricted release 7 years ago. The instructions were very specific. They were only to be opened if psychiatric claims were used during a custody dispute involving Mr. Marcus Hale. The room went still. Even I felt my stomach tighten hearing it spoken plainly. 7 years, before Lily existed, before the evaluations, before the court hearings, Eleanor had expected this. Marcus let out a quiet breath through his nose. Eleanor disliked me, he said. That's hardly a secret. No, Dr. Levin replied evenly, but fear and dislike are not the same thing. Matt landed harder. I saw it immediately in Marcus's face, small, fast, but real. The social worker finally spoke. Doctor, are you saying someone anticipated manipulation of psychiatric findings years in advance? Marcus answered before Levin could. I'm saying grief and wealth create strange family behavior. Eleanor controlled people with money her entire life. The sentence sounded polished, prepared. Too prepared. Then Dr. Levin reached into his briefcase and removed a thick, sealed folder. Unlike the envelope, this one carried hospital authorization markings across the front. Confidential. Release restricted by legal directive. Marcus's calm cracked for the first time.
Watching Marcus lose composure while sealed medical files surface makes me question what part of this custody case was never genuinely real.
Just slightly, but enough. He stepped forward. You cannot introduce sealed medical material without counsel present. We can now, Dr. Levin said. The custody evaluator frowned. Why now? The doctor rested one hand on the folder. Because until this morning, he said carefully, we did not have the key required to access the accompanying records. Nobody spoke. I looked down at the brass key still sitting in my palm. Then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Marcus wasn't looking at me anymore. He was staring directly at the folder. Not angry, not confused. Terrified. And that was the moment I realized something even worse than losing custody might have happened to me. Because innocent people usually fear accusations. Marcus was afraid of evidence. Marcus finally stopped trying to control the conversation. That was what unsettled me most. For over a year, he had answered every accusation before it fully formed. He corrected wording, redirected questions, softened his voice whenever anyone else became emotional. Watching him sit silently while Dr. Levin opened the sealed folder felt unnatural, like seeing a machine fail mid-process. Paperwork spread across the conference table. Prescription logs, insurance authorizations, psychiatric evaluations, email transcripts. The custody evaluator leaned forward slowly as Dr. Levin separated the documents into organized stacks. These records were independently archived, he explained. Some were removed from standard patient access under legal restriction. Marcus spoke carefully. Removed by whom? By Eleanor Vale. That name changed the temperature in the room every time now. Dr. Levin slid one document toward the evaluator. Mrs. Hale's medication history shows repeated dosage adjustment requests submitted through third-party communication. The evaluator scanned the page. Third-party meaning spouse involvement? Yes, Marcus answered immediately. I was authorized to assist my wife during postpartum treatment. That authorization, Dr. Levin said calmly, did not include recommending increases based on undocumented symptoms. Silence. Another file opened. This one contained notes from multiple psychiatric evaluations. Only the dates didn't line up. The evaluator noticed it first. These observations conflict with the reports submitted during custody review. Correct, Dr. Levin replied. I watched confusion begin replacing certainty around the table. Not sympathy yet, but instability inside the story Marcus had built. The doctor continued. Several independent evaluations described Mrs. Hale as emotionally exhausted, but coherent, responsive, and non-threatening. That's impossible, Marcus said too quickly. Everyone looked at him. He realized his mistake half a second later, too late. Dr. Levin removed one final packet from the folder. Private investigator findings. My chest tightened. I had never known Eleanor hired anyone. The doctor opened the report carefully. Approximately 6 years ago, Eleanor Vale requested independent observation after expressing concern about unusual involvement in Mrs. Hale's treatment management. The social worker looked stunned. She investigated her own grandson-in-law? She believed something was wrong, Dr. Levin said. Then he placed several printed pages on the table. Text messages, financial transfers, conversations between Marcus and a business associate. One highlighted message sat near the top of the stack. If she gets declared unstable, custody becomes uncomplicated. Nobody moved. Marcus's face emptied completely. And then Dr. Levin said the sentence that changed everything. There is one final item Eleanor instructed us to protect until today. He reached into the folder and removed a small digital recorder. A recorded statement, he said quietly, made 3 weeks before her death. The room didn't move when Dr. Levin pressed play. It was like even the air understood this was the part where everything either held together or finally collapsed. A soft crackle came through the recorder first, then Eleanor Vale's voice. Older, controlled, not confused at all. If you are hearing this, she began, then Marcus Hale has done exactly what I believed he would eventually attempt. Marcus didn't speak, didn't breathe loudly, didn't interrupt. That alone made my stomach tighten. He is intelligent, composed, and patient enough to make cruelty look like procedure. He will not raise his voice. He will not appear unstable. He will instead gather evidence, shape perception, and wait for others to do the deciding for him.
The evaluator looked down at the documents in front of her again, slowly, like she was seeing them differently for the first time. Eleanor's recording went on. I authorized independent psychiatric review of my granddaughter, Nidaleen Hale, after I observed repeated attempts to influence her treatment environment. My throat tightened at the word influence. Not illness, not breakdown, influence. She is not unstable, Eleanor said clearly, but she can be made to appear that way if the people around her control what information is seen and what is not. A pause, then the part that shifted everything. I believe Marcus Hale intends to secure long-term custodial leverage over his child through medical and legal misrepresentation. No, Marcus said quietly, this is a misunderstanding. But his voice didn't carry the same control anymore. The recording continued anyway. Eleanor described documentation hidden in separate medical archives. She described discrepancies in prescription approvals. She described communication logs that never appeared in court records. Each sentence wasn't emotional. It was structured, prepared, like she had known exactly how carefully Marcus would build his version of reality. Dr. Levin closed the folder gently. We verified every instruction before releasing this, he said, including the key's function. The custody evaluator looked up. The key opens what exactly? Dr. Levin hesitated just briefly. A private medical archive linked to Mrs. Hale's original treatment team. Unaltered records, unedited evaluations, and correspondence that was never submitted during the custody proceedings. Silence settled in again, but it felt different now. Not empty. Rebuilding. Marcus looked at me for the first time since the envelope was opened. Not like a man in control. Like someone trying to understand why the ground beneath him wasn't where he remembered it. And for the first time in over a year, no one in that room was looking at me like I was the problem. Weeks later, the custody ruling was formally reopened under emergency review. Medical findings were re-examined independently. Prior testimony was flagged for inconsistencies tied to incomplete records. Marcus's professional board placed him under investigation pending review of evidence suppression and unauthorized medical coordination. And for the first time since Lily was taken from me, I was allowed supervised contact. The room where I met her again was small and quiet. She didn't run to me immediately. She stood near the door, watching like she was trying to match memory with something she'd been told too many times. I didn't move toward her fast. I just stayed still and said her name once. Lily. That was it. Her expression changed in a way I can't fully describe. Not relief, not recognition yet, but something breaking loose from instruction. Behind her, the supervisor quietly looked away. No one interrupted. No one corrected her. And Marcus, who had once controlled every version of what people believed about me, was no longer in the room where she was learning the truth. I didn't rush her. I didn't explain everything at once. I just stayed there while the space between what she had been told and what she was seeing finally stopped holding the same shape. And for the first time in a long time, no one was looking at me like I was the problem. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough.
What happens in Nidalene's case raised a bigger question about how many other custody stories look resolved on paper but hide something entirely different underneath the surface, don't they?